Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Network Hour podcast. So, never mind my lighting. I'm having issues with lighting today, but we're gonna get this interview going and we're gonna get it done. So today I have a special guest with me. We've been trying to get this interview in sync for a while now. And it so happens we say, okay, we're just gonna do it. We're just gonna get it done. So today I have with me our special guest speaker. Her name is Michelle Brown. Michelle, welcome to the Network Hour podcast.
Thank you, Molly. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And this 30 minutes is gonna go by really quick, and we have a lot to unpack. So
Okay.
I'm just gonna give you guys a few things about Michelle. Michelle is from Trinidad and Tobago. She is my fellow Caribbean sister. Woo, woo. I'm from St. Vincent. She's from Trinidad. That's right across the pond. For those of you who don't know about the Caribbean and the islands, she has an extensive background in the medical field, but she migrated to the US to further to get a better life and to do more. And so her passion is helping others. She's a business owner, and like I said, her passion is helping others. She's passionate, I would say, about leaving a legacy and also about helping others be successful and create a bigger impact. So that is a little bit in a nutshell about Michelle, but we're going to learn a lot about her today. And when I was putting together this and what we're going to talk about, I was trying to figure out a topic and I couldn't come up with a topic. So we're just going to dive into Michelle's story today. I'm sure she's going to share some valuable nuggets with you, and you're going to be able to take away from her story and really put those things into place for your own journey, your own story, or maybe she might give some clarity on where you're trying to go. Hoping that this interview is going to give you all of that and more. So before we dive right deep into it, Michelle, I want to ask you because this is Network Hour, and something I do a lot is talk about networking, and I think networking is fused into so many things and everything. And I didn't know the extent of networking, or I didn't even know or heard the word networking when I was in the Caribbean. I only learned about that being up here in the US and studying and all of that stuff. So tell me, what does networking mean to you? And do you have a story to share of how networking helped you in some shape or form?
Sure. So networking, it's funny because I remember being a child and my mom would always say, you have to have a connection in every aspect of life. And of course, as a child, I didn't realize the magnitude of what that statement meant. But as I grew older, I totally understood what she meant. And so networking is, I mean, we all do it, right? On an everyday basis. We all have different forms of networks. We have schools that we attend. We have churches that we go to. We have a family that's a network. So we have jobs. We have coworkers. So there are several different networks. And I think sometimes people like try to attach so much to it that they don't realize that it's something they do on a regular, right? And so as I, migrated to the US and, started having to learn to navigate the system, even though I had a lot of relatives here, I really didn't have anyone to kind of show me and say, okay, well, you should do this, you should do that, you should do the other. And I was a teenager when I came here, and I quickly realized that I had to start all over. So did my GED, and I started working at a hospital. And I worked at one of the top hospitals in the nation. And so people, when they hear the hospital, they're like, oh my God, like, it's all the credibility, right? So that in itself, when people look to network, of course, they want to attach it to something big, right? So I have been blessed to have a lot of great people in my life, in my network. From high school in Trinidad, I'm still very good friends with a lot of my friends who I went to school with there. And fast forward moving to the US, when I worked at the hospital, of course, a great network there. And one of the things my mother always taught me is, your word is your bond, and be proud of your last name. right? And what that represents. And I knew I was representing the brown name. My father was a police officer. So I had to make sure that I was on the straight and narrow, right? So yeah, and in terms of, just I feel like we can all learn from each other and have something to offer as well. And so I think networking is just so important. We've never arrived. We can always learn.
Yeah, that is awesome. Totally, totally agree with you. And what is it with these Caribbean parents, huh? Because my father used to say that all the time. Don't your name is important. Don't go and squander your name. Don't make anybody talk on your name. Or that name was so important, so important. And yeah, you're right. You have to make sure that you do all those things. And networking is such an integral part in every facet of what you do, especially professionally.
Absolutely.
So tell us about who Michelle is. Give us a little insight into who Michelle is. I know we talk a lot about the professional side of things and all that side of things, but um, you grew up somewhere. You were passionate about some things at a young age in your life, and tell us about all of those things.
Yeah, sure. So growing up in the Caribbean was phenomenal. I tell people I would not trade it for the world. And ever since I remember myself, I always liked helping people. I got joy no matter what it was. It didn't need to be anything major, but I always got joy with helping others. And so, when I was younger, as I mentioned before, my dad was a police officer. One of my older sisters was a police officer as well. And I just thought if I stayed in Trinidad, that's exactly what I would do, right? So in being in a service kind of household, if you will, my mom also worked for the government. I just, wasn't really sure. I kind of wanted to be a flight attendant, as a little girl, that was my thing.
Everybody.
Right. And then, of course, you go to school and you graduate, and then what? Right. So in graduating, of course, at the time, I don't want to say the year, that will really date myself, but it was hard in Trinidad. And, my mom, she was just like, okay, what are you going to do now that you finish school? So I went to secretarial school and I did different things. And what I realized was I wasn't getting work. And my parents made the decision for me to go abroad. They're like, go to the US and see if you can make that better life. And as I said, I came and it was really having to learn, everything. Did menial jobs, babysitting, not ashamed of it at all, right? We all have to start somewhere, right? And so I did that for a while. And then I just knew I wanted better. So I started my GED. I did that on Saturdays because I worked Monday to Friday. And once I attained that GED, someone said, why don't you go to the hospital? They're hiring. So I was like, okay. So I went there and I, interviewed for the position. It was a position in the rehabilitation department. And I got the job. And I was so elated because for the first time, I was actually going to make quote unquote good money, right? So I was so happy, and I stayed there for a couple years. I made really good friends with a physical therapist there, and he had a friend who was opening up a medical practice, and he said, Michelle, I think you should interview for the position. And I said, well, I don't have any experience as an office manager. He said, but you're smart, they're going to teach you, and because of your work ethic and personality, I think you're going to do great. So people always gravitate to me. I'm easy to talk to. I'm very easygoing. I do not like talking about people. I don't like negativity. My peace of mind, I protect at all costs, and so people gravitate to me and they always say, there's something about you, I have a friend back home. He says, at the time I lived in, Brooklyn, New York, and he was like, you should not be living in Brooklyn. I'm like, why? He goes, I don't know, like you should be somewhere else. So sometimes people make little deposits in your life and, you just kind of, because I don't take compliments well. I think I have a good self-image, but I never want to get full of myself. I want to remain humble. So even though I get complimented, I just, okay, thank you. And I move on. I don't really, like, oh, and big up myself kind of thing. And so I interviewed for that job and I started working with that doctor. I stayed with him for 2 years and then I went on with another surgeon to help him with his medical practice. And I stayed there for 16 years. And so loved what I did, because again, it was people related, seeing patients happy after their surgeries, thanking me for going above and beyond, helping them pre-operatively, post-operatively. Some people lived alone. They didn't have anyone to guide them through the steps of what they should do before surgery and things like that. And really, really loved it. But I wanted more. I wanted more. I think I got to the point where I want to say I outgrew my position because I felt like I had so much more to offer the world. And I always liked, as I mentioned, helping people. And I saw people struggle and I thought about it. I said, here it is. My mom sent me to the US for that quote unquote better life. Now, mind you, I was already making a 6-figure income. However, the lifestyle I thought I would have making a 6-figure income wasn't there. That famous uncle that we all have, right, takes 30%. And so that 6-figure income dwindles a bit, right? And you're like, oh, okay. But I wanted more. I wanted more. I felt like I wasn't truly living my purpose. And even though patients were happy, yes, it felt good, but I knew there was something bigger that I should be doing. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, Molly, I really didn't know what that was. Really, really didn't. And one of my friends invited me to an event one weekend and I went, and it was like a spa event. I love taking care of myself. So I went to that. And it was there I met a young lady who, she just, asked small talk, usually things, what do you do, for a living, that type of stuff. So I shared some of the things I just shared there. And she said, I think based on what you said, wanting to live a purpose-driven life, I may have something that, would benefit you. So she said, why don't you speak to the person that invited you? Meanwhile, this was my friend and he had never spoken to me about anything like that before. Maybe because we never really had the conversation in terms of wanting to do more. Sometimes you have friends, but certain conversations you don't have, mm-hmm. right? And then when I spoke to him, actually, I learned about network marketing in terms of, and I didn't understand the magnitude of it initially, but what I saw just made sense in terms of bettering my life, and now I can help others. Because, they say you can give a man a fish, but if you can teach him how to fish, he'll have food for life. Right. And so that's where my entrepreneurial journey started.
That is so awesome. And we're gonna talk about what you do in that journey. But I wanna rest in this for a minute because you talk about purpose. And I think that's so important. And I guess my question would be, how did you recognize that your purpose was for more? Because a lot of times we people don't get there sometimes, and sometimes people are satisfied with just the bare minimum, or working and I'm living, I'm paying my bills. Life is not great, but it is good. Why mess with that? And so I want you to talk about the importance to you of wanting more, and the importance of seeking out that purpose and realizing that purpose.
Yeah. Wow, that's a loaded question. So I believe because growing up, like I always had that servant spirit in terms of wanting to help. However, my parents taught me what they knew: go to school, get an education, and get a job, right? And life should be great. Get that white picket fence house and, 2.5 kids or whatever that is, right? And I realized that in my job, as I said, I loved it. I loved what I did, but I started feeling like, why am I here? it seemed like I had served my purpose there, and it was time to move on and go serve the bigger, community. And again, I just really didn't know what that looked like. I knew what I wanted, I knew what I felt, but I didn't know what it was or how I would get there. And one of my sisters, she's very spiritual, and I had a conversation with her about it, and she was like, pray about it, And you know how sometimes you want what you want now, and you're like, God's taking too long, right?
Yeah.
So I prayed about it. Now, at the time, I was not a Christian like my sister. We grew up Catholic. So I prayed, and I was like, well, how do I know that he's, what sign am I going to get? Like, how am I going to know? And she said, you'll know. And I just left it there. And I stayed in the job for some time after that, because I wasn't moved. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. And as you said, the job was safe, that quote unquote good money. There were people that weren't making as much. I wasn't living hand to mouth. So it kind of felt comfortable, but deep down, there was that burning desire to do more. And they said, God works in mysterious ways. Well, he sure does, because I never thought I would find it in a business, right? Because you know people go into business to make money, and stuff like that. And as I said, when my friend, talked to me about, the business, and I started understanding it a little bit more in terms of the magnitude of it, it was more than money. And it was never money for me, because making the income I already had, I wasn't really looking for money. I was looking for that purpose, that thing that, that impact, all over the world. And so money was never it in terms of business for me. And I remember meeting a gentleman, and he asked me a question. He said, so, why are you in business? And I said, because I want to make a difference. He said, well, are you passionate about charities and stuff like that? So I said, yeah. So he said, do you have the income now that, let's say one of your favorite charities wanted to, needed $50,000. Do you have it? And of course, the answer was no, right? And it made me think, and I said, oh, so it may not be money for me directly, but indirectly, I needed the business for the money to do the things that I'm passionate about, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
It definitely makes sense. And I feel like even as I'm listening to you, and as our listeners would be listening to you, what would you say to that person right now who's listening to this and listening to you talking about purpose, and have within their mind something they want to do? They want to do more, but they just can't come to terms with what that is yet, or how they go about doing it. What is that advice you would give to that person listening right now?
So the first thing I would say is really dig deep. Do some serious soul searching. If you are, a man or woman of faith, definitely take it to whoever you believe in. And give it some time. I think sometimes we look at what other people are doing, right? And you might have a friend doing something great, and you have another friend doing something else, and you're in all different directions because you feel that you should be doing that too. Or this person, she's making soaps, or she's doing this, and, oh, maybe if I do that, I would be, so sometimes we tend to not really listen to that inner voice and focus on what other people are doing, and kind of lose ourselves, right? It's just like people thinking, oh, well, if you are not an athlete or an actress or a singer, you don't have a gift. We all have gifts, right? So it's looking at what is your gift, right? What brings you joy? Like, I always knew helping people brought me joy. Ever since I was a little girl, I always knew it. I didn't know how it would manifest, but I knew it. So I would say really do some soul searching, quiet place, sit, pray about it. And then the next thing is when you receive it, listen. Because again, sometimes we tend to want to be a little bit all over the place, right? And fighting, or sometimes we might say, well, I want to do this, but it's not going to give me money, or I need money. So you kind of end up going a different route, even though that's not where you should be going. But it's, I guess, short-term thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
And not thinking about the bigger picture as to, you know, I need to maybe sacrifice this for the greater good, if you will.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah.
I think sometimes too, what could happen too is that, and let me know if you felt this in instances, because the journey to entrepreneurship is not an easy one,
Right.
and you go through ups and downs. And sometimes the first thing that I thought about when I was journeying into that entrepreneurship is, am I going to be able to pay my bills?
Mm-hmm.
Basic thing. Am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to pay my rent and buy groceries? Those
Right.
basic things. And then fear steps in and you start being afraid of the unknown,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to work? Is it going to pan out? Am I and so a lot of times we are afraid to step out in faith
Yes.
because we doubt our own selves and we suck ourselves out of even trying. And my grandmother used to say something, I don't know if it's a Caribbean thing, but um, she used to say, nothing beats a trial but a failure.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so before you've already failed
Right.
because you didn't try.
Yes.
And I think that is such the problem of so many of people, so many of us that are trying to, we want to do more, we want to make an impact, we want to make a difference, but that fear tends to hold you back a lot at times.
Yes.
Have you experienced any of that fear? Because my next question to you was, what were some of the obstacles and some of the hindrances to you making that decision to become an entrepreneur, and how did you get over that? How did you overcome that?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. And I totally agree with everything you said just now. Sometimes self-doubt is our worst, you know, the worst thing we can do to ourselves, you know, and also thinking about what other people would say, right? Sometimes we're looking for validation, and sometimes we're looking for it, of course, from the people that are closest to us. And sometimes they're the ones that hurt us the most. Not, they don't intend to,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they want and have your best interest, but sometimes they don't realize by killing your dream, that's exactly what they're doing. They're hurting you in the name of protecting you, right? So, you know, for me, as I said, my journey kind of started while I was still employed. So having to worry about, you know, paying bills and all those things, it wasn't an initial thought for me. I am blessed to have coaches and mentors in my life. And I think that was the biggest blessing in this entire journey. Because a lot of times we want to do things, but who do we bounce things off of? Do we have someone that has gone before us in the same place we're looking to go that would be honest? Because, you know, friends and family may tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear, right? So having coaches and mentors who would be honest with me, and I know they would never just tell me something because it sounds good or to, you know, protect my ego, right? And they would never make decisions for me, but they would coach me through questions. So, okay, you want to do X, Y, X.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you hope to do with X? And I realized that by that Q&A, I came to my own conclusions, you know, for myself, but with the guidance through questions,
Yeah.
you know. So in terms of, was it scary? Yeah, because I think the hardest part, to be honest, Molly, was it hurt my heart to know that I was in a place that I no longer wanted to be, which was the job. Like I knew physically I was there, mentally I had checked out a long time ago. You know? But I was still, I knew I had a responsibility. So I stayed and I did what I had to do, you know, and I had a great relationship, you know, with my boss and everything, but I just knew Michelle had to take care of Michelle. Michelle of herself was no longer happy. Like, you know, now in retrospect, you're hearing about mental health, like I was almost in crisis and didn't realize.
Yeah.
Because I was coping, you know? So I think that was the toughest part, like having to stay and do and with a smile on my face every day, you know, and knowing what I really wanted to do. But I also know I had to be patient and take time, you know, and not rush anything and make sure I had set certain things in place. And even though when I decided to fully, you know, become an entrepreneur, I still didn't have things in place. But I realized we never have everything in place. All the T's aren't going to be crossed and all the I's aren't going to be dotted, no matter how much we prepare, how much we plan, how much we write things down. That's just life, right? And so I knew that ideal time would never come. I had to take that leap of faith and trust in what I was feeling and what I wanted for myself, that if this is what I knew I want, I had to make it work, that I couldn't depend on anyone else, even though I had coaches and mentors and stuff like that, yes. But Michelle had to make it work for Michelle at the end of the day, because it was my decision. Yeah.
Thank you for that, because your story is so on point, and what you're saying too, because since the pandemic happened, and especially women, I notice a lot more women now are being intentional and are not sticking around in jobs anymore that they're not happy. A lot of people are pivoting into different industries. You might have been, like, for instance, I started working in the accounting finance industry, and I've pivoted somewhat into education and coaching. And there are people, because people want, it's a realization that life is short, and
Right.
you want to live a fulfilled life, as fulfilled as possible.
Yes.
You wanna make an impact, and you wanna create a legacy.
Yes.
And realizing that if you're in something that stagnates your growth and does not utilize all of your potential and all of what you want to do, then you have to wake up and get going, because you can't stay stagnant in that one place forever. And I think a lot of people since the pandemic has been realizing that, and you see them talk about so many jobs available now, because people are leaving their jobs. People are no longer just wanting a job for money. They want family security. They want flexibility. They want time to be able to do other things. And so I think it is so important, and you're so on point with everything that you just shared and everything that you just said.
Yeah.
So before we run out of time, I want you to talk about exactly what you do and explain to people exactly what you do.
Yeah, sure. So, excuse me, it's a little bit multifaceted, so I'll try to condense it a little. So the more I talk to individuals, the more I realize we're all very similar and want the same things. Some of the things you just mentioned. We want peace of mind. We want to be able to take care of families. We want to be able to provide if we have children. We want to set them up for future college, whatever that might be. And sometimes we are not achieving that, and we're stuck, or we feel stuck because of what we were maybe taught, you know, that there's this one way. Now, education is great and it has its place in everything. However, we know a lot of people who are successful and they do not even have a college degree. So when you look at what success means, I think we all have to identify that for ourselves, right? And so along my entrepreneurial journey, that's one of the things I focus on with individuals. It's okay, yes, most times people come to me because they want to, create additional income, but why?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I ask them why. Why? What is the purpose? Let's say I gave you $2,000 extra a month. I can give that to you. How would that benefit your life? What would you do with it? So it's okay to have and say, I want to create income or more income, but for what purpose? And in asking those questions, I realized that a lot of times they're not sure. It just sounds good. They know they want to make more, but they're not sure what they're going to do or why, So after some more probing, then I might get, to finish college, to buy a home, to travel, after delving, because we're so conditioned, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Versus how do you want to live? Because sometimes we know what we want to be doesn't provide the lifestyle that we want. And that doesn't have to be lavish, because for everyone that looks differently. Right? So it's really helping individuals to create that safety net that, God forbid, illness or they get terminated, downsizing, whatever is going on at the job, they have something else that they can fall back on. Because a lot of people right now, if their jobs are taken away from them, they have nothing else. So it's helping people to really change the way they think and realize that that old way that at least I was raised, not that anything is wrong with it, but there are other ways, right? And then what if? It could be a spouse getting sick. It could be anything. And I think sometimes we don't think about those things. We just think like we're going to live forever and everyone's going to be happy and, but it's setting yourself up for the what ifs, right? And of course, yes, primarily it's teaching them to create additional income, but the bigger aspect is helping them become their best selves. Because a lot of people are struggling with self-esteem issues, which is why, as you mentioned before, sometimes we feel we're not good enough, or we feel, oh, that's for those people, it's not for us, like I can't live that lifestyle, and so it's really bringing out the best in them as well, through coaching and mentorship books, or there are a lot of different ways, there are a lot of different tools. It's really personalized depending on who I'm sitting with, and helping them really get to their truest potential, right? And again, the sky's the limit. Not even the sky's the limit. Whatever they want to accomplish, letting them know that they can, it's just going to take some consistent work. As anything else, you want to lose weight, you're going to have to eat properly, exercise, drink, all those things, get rest, right? So there's no quick fix. Anything that's worth having is going to take consistent effort.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's really, making sure that they're happy with their decisions. Just like my coaches made sure I was happy with mine. They never made decisions for me. They guided me through questions, and I came to my own realizations. And people always take more ownership when they come to their own for themselves.
Awesome.
Versus us telling them what to do.
Okay, we're out of time, but before we go, I want you to tell people how they can contact you, how they can reach you if they want to find out more of what you do, your entrepreneurship journey, and if they want your coaching or your guidance on how to get there.
Sure. So best way is email or cell phone. So it's my email is Michelle Brown, like the color, diamond like the stone, @gmail.com. And my cell phone number is 917-753-4108. And if I said that too quickly, you can feel free to reach out with Molly. She also knows how to reach me.
Don't worry, I will be putting all of this information as well in the podcast notes. And so people can reach you. And don't worry, guys. I know this is 30 minutes. It was a short session. There's a lot more that we needed to get into. But you're gonna hear more of us and more of our stories because we're gonna keep the podcast episodes coming and we're gonna be talking about all different topics. And I would love to invite back Michelle again so that we can dissect some things and really help you guys in whether it be in your personal life, in your entrepreneurship journey, or in your professional career and advancement. So don't worry, we will be back. I just want to say thank you, Michelle, so much for coming and for talking to me today about your journey to entrepreneurship and your ups and your downs and how you overcome and all of that stuff. I am sure this information and your story is going to help somebody who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur or maybe might feel stuck and don't know what else to do. Any last minute words to those people, whether you feel stuck or you're just in a limbo of decision making? Any quotes, any motivation, any last minute advice you want to give them?
Yeah, a few quick things. The power of the spoken word is real, right? So be careful about the things you say, not only to others, but to yourself. We talk to ourselves more than other people talk to us, right? So be careful of the words that you say to yourself. Trust your gut. If you have a gut feeling about something, no matter who it is, your mother, your father, your spouse, and I know sometimes that's tough to hear, but we were all created uniquely, right? And have our own individual lives to lead. And sometimes you see your vision and purpose and someone else does not. And sometimes those people are in your family. So trust yourself, trust your gut, and trust your journey. And the best thing you can do is move forward and show them, not in a boastful way, right? But just by your works, that this is what you were meant to do. And also trust the process because it is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a process. So enjoy the journey, as my mentor always says to me, enjoy the journey and don't get weary in well doing.
That's that's great advice. Thank you so much, Michelle, for that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, networkers, it's been great. This has been another episode of the Network Hour podcast. Again, we want to thank Michelle again for coming by and for sharing her story. And I just want to say to you guys, um, it's a holiday weekend. This video is probably not going to come out until Wednesday, but I want to say to everyone, have a great weekend, have a great time. If you're thinking about doing something, get up, do it. Don't be afraid, don't be scared, and lean on those mentors. Find a mentor, find someone that would help you along that journey, and let's all become better version of ourselves. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you for listening. Until next time, this has been Molly Crease, your Network Hour podcast host. Bye.